Other distressing world news last week came in the form of the Amazon forest burning. We got this incredible, I don't know if it was drone, helicopter, space, satellite footage of just these massive, massive fires all across Brazil and South America. Whilst this story seems to have sort of suddenly disappeared and disappeared almost as quickly, it's really important that we keep the story alive because we've got to fight more and more, pushing back against these dire effects of capitalism and that it's having on the planet. It seems that Brazil has had a lot of forest fires this year, in fact, the highest number since 2010, according to the National Institute for Space Research. The fires can occur naturally during the dry seasons, and it's been one of the hotter years on record, so perhaps it's not surprising that the fires are starting. However, there are reports that Brazilian President Bolsonaro has encouraged rainforest clearing for farming and logging, and if that's the case, it just makes me want to weep for our world. The high and the low of it is that this is just bad news for everyone involved. Not only is the burning of trees and land emitting a ton of carbon into the atmosphere, but we rely on those trees to absorb carbon from the atmosphere. In fact, a study last year suggested that planting 1 trillion trees, and that's in addition to the ones that have been burned this year, because the study was done last year, 1 trillion trees could reduce the problem massively. It could, in fact, reverse global warming. But the problem is that it takes years for these trees to mature. We could even be looking at upwards of 50 years for it to have a real effect. That's if we plant and protect 1 trillion trees without burning and destroying any more. So we need to stop planting trees, stop burning them down. It's suggested that this is something that any one of us could do. We could go out and plant a tree. There's this kind of like guerrilla tree planting idea going on. But also making land available to trees. We also need to look at why deforestation happens. And a large amount of it points to farming, particularly meat farming, as the farmers use the fertile soil to grow grass, the space for grazing animals. Not to mention that meat farming itself creates large amounts of carbon dioxide anyway, and these animals take time to mature, are transported, processed, packaged, and they're packaged in plastic before being transported more to our supermarkets. Like, the whole process just seems backwards to me. And the UN did say in August that global meat consumption has to fall in order to combat global warming. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, has suggested that the benefits are twofold because it frees up land, as we mentioned, where we can plant more trees, and it would cut gigatons of carbon dioxide being emitted into the atmosphere by the process of cultivating meat. They didn't say to go totally meat-free, as they don't recommend diets. They didn't want to kind of get their hands wet in all of that. But the message was pretty damn clear. Now, I believe this is an easy win. Because if every single one of us went meat-free just like 2-3 days a week, 25% of our meals, 30% of our meals, or, the equivalent of 6 to 10 meals over a week, we could have a huge impact. One of the things that I repeatedly struggled to get my head around is just how small of an impact we have on our own individually, but that impact quickly becomes more dramatic when more of us get involved, and that's for positive and negative. So the negative is one of us drives a car, it's not going to have a massive impact, but if millions of us drive cars, that's going to have a pretty dire effect on the environment. But the inverse is true. If one of us avoids driving our cars, okay, it's having an effect, but not a massive one. But if millions of us can avoid driving our cars, if millions of us can avoid eating meat a couple of days a week, that could have an effect. And it's not as scary as it sounds. I love bacon. I love steak. Believe me, like, if there's anyone that's going to be pulled away, I'd probably be one of the last. But I've actually found it quite exciting looking at recipes, trying different foods. I'm not going to swap meat for meat substitutes. I don't want to kind of go this faux bacon and like imitation meats. I'm just going to balance out my meat cravings on the meat, on the meat days, if you like, the days I'm going to eat meat. And the other days I'll make sure I have meat-free meals. It's that easy, just trying to keep a balance. Apparently, the easiest way to do it is just think of grain, green, and bean. I can't remember where I saw this, but I've seen it lots as I've been researching this. And if you go for grain, green, and bean, you get a really balanced, healthy meal, high in nutrients and proteins. And yes, that is proteins without meat. Apparently, the combination of beans and grain gives you like all the amino acids you need. I don't know. But it's as simple as that. So tonight I'll be getting my grain from whole wheat tortilla wraps, my green from spinach and roasted vegetables, and my bean from, well, beans as well as some homemade hummus. And boom, healthy dinner and saving the planet. 2 for 1. Try it. And maybe it'll do you good, getting more vegetables in as well. Just start by switching out, like, I don't know, every other dinner with like a vegetarian option, and just go from there.